I want you to picture the 1950s. Not the real history of the Cold War or segregation, but the television version.
Oh, right, the black and white, fuzz-free picket fence version.
Exactly. And if you zoom in on that picture, right into the living room of the most famous house in America, you see this little girl, pigtails, a button nose, just the absolute embodiment of innocence.
You're talking about Kitten.
I am Kathy Anderson, but everyone knew her as Kitten, the youngest daughter on Father Knows Best. For 6 years, she was effectively America's little sister. But the reason we're starting here today is because that little girl, the actress Lauren Chapin, has died.
Yeah, it's the end of a very specific, a very complicated era. The news came out this morning, confirmed by her son, Matthew Chapin. Lauren passed away on Tuesday, February 24th, 2026. She was 80 years old.
And from what the family has shared, this wasn't a sudden event. She'd been fighting cancer for 5 years. A long, hard-fought battle is how they described it. And honestly, hard-fought seems to be the theme of her entire life, not just the end of it.
That's really the core of what we need to discuss today. Because if you just read the headline, child star dies at 80, you completely miss the actual story. We were looking at a life that was split violently in two.
Right. You had the on-screen perfection of the mid-century ideal, and then you had an off-screen reality that was, frankly, a horror story.
Which is why we're going to dig into all of that today. We're pulling from recent obituaries, the family statements, and specifically her 1989 autobiography, Father Does Know Best.
Because our mission in this deep dive is to look at the resilience of Kitten, to understand how she survived the curse of early fame, to find redemption later in life. You really have to understand just how far she fell.
And you have to understand the height she fell from. I think it's hard for modern audiences to really grasp just how big Father Knows Best was. I mean, we have a million streaming options now.
Yeah.
Back in 1954, you had 3 channels.
It wasn't just a show, it was a cultural instruction manual.
Precisely. It ran from 1954 to 1960. Over 200 episodes on CBS and NBC. It defined the golden age of family television. No violence, wholesome, idealized middle-class life. Robert Young played Jim Anderson, the patriarch who literally never lost his temper.
Jane Wyatt was the mother who was always perfectly coiffed while vacuuming.
Right, and then you had the kids, Eleanor Donahue, Billy Gray, and Lauren Chapin as the baby, Kitten.
And Lauren was cast at age 9. Think about that for a second. 9 years old. She wasn't just playing a role. She was being molded into a national symbol of obedience and sweetness. I mean, she won 5 Junior Emmy Awards.
She was very good at it. The tributes pouring in now mention her expressive face and her honest curiosity. She had this spark that made you want to protect her. But the cruel irony, and this is where the story gets incredibly dark, is that while she was being protected by Robert Young on a soundstage,
nobody was protecting her in real life.
Exactly. Nobody.
This is the part of the deep dive where the Golden Age veneer cracks wide open. In her book, she talks about her home life being the polar opposite of the Anderson house. Her mother was an alcoholic. Her father was sexually abusive.
It creates this impossible psychological split. Imagine the dissonance for a kid. You spend 10 hours a day on a set where problems are solved with gentle conversation and a hug. Then you go home to a chaotic, abusive environment. You are literally living in 2 different realities.
There's a quote from her from an interview she gave back in 1989 on Regis and Kathy Lee, and it just haunts me. She said, "It was very difficult to understand how Kathy Anderson could be loved and protected, and Lauren Chapin lived a whole different kind of life. I didn't understand how God could let me suffer."
That's the voice of a confused, traumatized child. She couldn't reconcile it. And we know now that the damage started early. By the time she was 11, she stated she was already dealing with what she called a manic depressive personality.
11. She should have been worrying about math homework or riding her bike, not managing a personality disorder while carrying a network TV show.
But the studio system of the 1950s wasn't built to handle that. Children were assets. As long as Kitten showed up and knew her lines, the machinery kept moving. But then, inevitably,
the machine stops.
1960.
The show is canceled. Lauren is a teenager now. And this is the moment we see with so many child stars, from Judy Garland all the way to the kids on the Disney Channel today. The transition.
It's the cute trap. The public fell in love with the 9-year-old with the pigtails. They didn't have a place for a 16-year-old Lauren Chapin who was trying to figure out who she was. Producers told her she was too identified with the character. She was just frozen in time.
So the work dries up. And without that structure, without that validation of being a star, everything fell apart. The next 16 years of her life, I mean, looking at the timeline, it reads like a systematic destruction of a person.
It really does. She dropped out of high school. She was married and divorced twice before she even turned 19. She was looking for love, looking for an escape, and she found it in the absolute worst places.
The sources mentioned she was introduced to drugs by one of her husbands. And this wasn't just partying, this was a severe heroin addiction.
A heroin addiction that lasted until she was 25. Think about the timeline here. The show ends in 1960. By the mid-60s, Kitten is addicted to heroin and facing jail time. She had legal troubles, arrested for forgery, arrested for drug possession, the mugshots from that era.
Oh, if you put them next to a still from Father Knows Best, you wouldn't believe it's the same species, let alone the same person.
It's staggering. And the physical toll wasn't just the drugs.
No, the tragedy that stands out to me, the one that makes you just want to stop and take a breath, is the pregnancies. She suffered 8 miscarriages.
8. It's almost unfathomable. The amount of grief, physical trauma, and loss compacted into such a short period of time. She also attempted suicide multiple times during these years. She was screaming for help, and for a long time, it seemed like no one was listening.
It really highlights how disposable these kids were to the industry. Once she wasn't useful, she was just another addict in the legal system. The studios didn't swoop in to send her to a luxury rehab. She was completely on her own.
But this is why her death notice isn't just a tragedy. If the story ended in 1969, we'd be talking about another victim of the child actor curse. But it didn't end there.
No, it didn't. And this is the resilience part of our deep dive, the real turnaround. The pivot point seems to be 1970.
Right. She went into a psychiatric hospital, which, given the mental health treatments of the late 60s, was a terrifying thing in itself. But she came out. She found sobriety. And crucially, she found faith.
She became an evangelist. Now, I know sometimes that term gets loaded, but for Lauren, it seemed to be entirely about service. She didn't just preach, she worked.
She realized her story had utility. She could say to people, I was on the top of the world and I was in the gutter, and here is how I survived. She became a public speaker and a minister. And looking at the numbers from just the last 6 years of her life, she raised over $2 million for underprivileged and abused children.
That is putting your effort where your mouth is. She wasn't just showing up to cut ribbons. She was doing the groundwork. I read that she was named honorable mayor of 3 different cities in Oklahoma, Texas, and Florida. That doesn't happen unless you are deeply embedded in those communities helping people.
It's a total reclaiming of identity. She went from being Kitten the character to Lauren the survivor and helper. But what I find really fascinating is that she didn't completely sever ties with Hollywood. She went back, but in a totally different capacity.
You're talking about her career shift to a talent manager.
Exactly. She worked as a talent agent and manager. And there's this great fun fact that she took credit for helping guide the career of a young Jennifer Love Hewitt way back before Party of Five.
See, that makes perfect sense to me. Who better to guide a young girl through that minefield than someone who stepped on every single mine?
It's a protective instinct.
Yeah.
She couldn't save her younger self, so she tried to ensure the next generation didn't get chewed up the same way. She was trying to be the adult in the room that she never had.
Though she did dip her toe back into acting a few times herself, there were those Father Knows Best reunion specials in 1977.
Which must have been incredibly surreal. Walking back onto that set, seeing Robert Young and Jane Wyatt again, but doing it as a sober woman who had lived through actual hell.
Yeah, and she did a movie with Gary Coleman called Scout's Honor in 1980, and then way later, just a few years ago, in 2016 and 2017, she did a final role, a YouTube series called School Bus Diaries, where she played a character named Mama Bev.
I love that she did that. It shows she still enjoyed the craft, she enjoyed performing, she just hated the business.
Oh, she really hated the business. Her stance on child acting later in life was practically zero tolerance. The expert sources highlight the specific anecdote about her daughter, Summer. Lauren actually took Summer to California to get an agent. They were right there, ready to sign the papers.
And she couldn't do it.
She pulled the plug at the absolute last minute. Her mom instincts overrode everything else. She said her reasoning was she wanted her daughter to have an education, not live in a world of make-believe. Her quote was blunt. She said, I just do not think children should be actors.
It is very hard to argue with her, given her experience. She saw the industry as inherently predatory. But here is the paradox that I just can't stop thinking about. She hated the industry, she kept her daughter out of it, but she still loved the Anderson family.
You mean the fictional family?
Yes. You would think she would look at Father Knows Best with pure cynicism, seeing it as a massive lie. But she didn't. She told the Orlando Sentinel back in 2001 that she actually tried to model her own parenting on the Andersons.
That is wild. She was abused by her real parents, and the TV parents were just actors reading scripts, but she still saw that script as the ideal.
She separated the message from the messenger. She said she wanted to be like Margaret and Jim Anderson for her own kids, Matthew and Summer. She emphasized that it wasn't about being perfect, but about time, listening, being there, all the things she didn't get from her own parents.
It's almost like she decided to make the fiction real. She took the script of Father Knows Best and tried to live it out in the real world, despite all the trauma.
She even said that if she could be on TV again, she'd pray for a show like that. No violence, no sex, just love. She never lost her appreciation for innocence, even if the world tried to strip hers away.
That is a profound level of grace, to forgive the lie and find the truth in it.
It really is. And now, looking at the final chapter of her life. Again, she passed on Tuesday, February 24th, 2026, from complications from cancer. Her son Matthew announced it on Facebook.
She's survived by Matthew, her daughter Summer, who is a singer, so keeping the performance gene alive, and her brother Michael, who is also a former child actor.
Right, and she was preceded in death by her brother Billy. It was a family of entertainers, for better or worse.
Financially, it seems she was okay at the end. Estimates put her net worth between $1 million and $3 million at the time of her death, largely from her early TV work, residuals, and her later books and speaking engagements.
Which is a victory in itself. Most child stars from that era who went through heroin addiction and prison did not die millionaires. They often died destitute. The fact that she rebuilt her financial life is just another metric of her immense resilience.
So when we step back and look at Atu Lauren's The Golden Age ideal on the screen and the survivor who died this week, what are we left with?
I think we're left with a testament to survival. Lauren Chapin was a casualty of the Golden Age. She was collateral damage in the studio system's quest to sell toothpaste and cars to American families. But she refused to stay a victim.
Her legacy isn't just the TV show. It's the 50-plus years she spent recovering from it and helping others do the same. She stopped trying to be the perfect child and started trying to be a good human.
And by all accounts, she succeeded.
It does leave you with a provocative thought, though. For you listening right now, we still consume this stuff, maybe not Father Knows Best, but we watch kids on TikTok, on YouTube, on Disney. We love the innocent.
We crave it. We always have.
But are we considering the real-world cost paid by the children who make those videos? Lauren Chapin's life suggests that the price of putting that perfect innocence on a screen is often the total loss of it in real life. We get the entertainment, and the kid gets the trauma.
That is a heavy tab to pay. And maybe stories like Lauren's should make us hesitate before we click follow on the next viral child star.
It certainly changes how I'll watch those wholesome, nostalgic reruns. Rest in peace, Kitten. You earned it. And thank you all for joining us for